Yes. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everybody about our meeting format. Tonight's Planning Commission meeting is being held in person and online. Commissioners, Planning Department staff, and members of the public are attending in the Wheat Ridge City Hall and also by way of the Zoom platform. Members of the public who are not present and wish to make comments may participate virtually by joining through Zoom, either on a device or by calling in. A Zoom meeting link and dial-in information can be found on wheatridgespeaks.org. In addition to being online via Zoom, we are also broadcasting this meeting on Channel 8 and wheatridgespeaks.org. When it is time for public comment, and there are several public comment periods tonight, those who wish to comment on our Zoom connection use the raise your hand button. If you are dialing in, press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute your phone. If you plan to speak tonight, please keep background noise to a minimum. If you do not plan to speak, we recommend you simply view the meeting live by watching on Channel 8 or on wheatridgespeaks.org. We appreciate your participation in tonight's meeting, and we hope to create a friendly and respectful atmosphere for public dialogue. I would now like to call to order the City of Wheat Ridge Planning Commission meeting for December 18th, 2024. May I please get a roll call of members?
Jonathan Shelkey. Christine Disney.
Here.
Daniel Gravy.
Here.
Patrick Quinn.
Here.
Michael Moore.
Here.
Sierra Quiones.
Here.
And Krista Hollub and Will Kearns are absent.
The next order on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item is approving the order of tonight's agenda. Does anyone have any changes to the order of the agenda? Seeing none, the agenda will stand as published. Next, we'll vote to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Is there a motion to approve the minutes from November 21st, 2024?
Madam Chair, motion to approve minutes as presented.
May I have a second? Commissioners, please vote.
Motion approved 6-0.
We will now open the general interest public forum. This is the time for any person to speak on any subject not on the agenda. If you plan to speak on an item that is on tonight's agenda, please wait until we get to those items. All speakers are asked to limit their remarks to 3 minutes. Speakers may not donate their time. Is anyone signed up to speak?
No, Madam Chair.
Is anyone on Zoom?
Nobody on Zoom.
All right, thank you. I will now close the public forum. Tonight we have 3 public hearings. If you comment during a public hearing tonight, by choosing to testify, you are agreeing that the testimony you give will be the truth as you know it. Before we begin, I would like to again welcome any members of the public. It is important that the public hearing be conducted in a dignified and civil manner. Our hope is that we create a friendly and respectful atmosphere for public dialogue, and we appreciate your help in this process. I ask that you respect statements made by city staff, the applicant, and my fellow planning commissioners. Please do not clap, yell, boo, make commentary from the audience, or otherwise disrupt the proceedings. We typically administer an oath for any participant in a public hearing. In this hybrid format, if you comment during a public hearing tonight, By choosing to testify, you are agreeing that the testimony you give will be the truth as you know it. We start all public hearings with a presentation from staff and, for some cases, with a presentation from the applicant. After the presentations, the commission will ask questions of staff and the applicant. After that, we'll invite members of the public to comment as well. I will now open the hearing for case number ZOA-24-08. Commissioner Quinn, will you please introduce the item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to present case number ZOA 2408, an ordinance amending Chapter 26 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning regulation of natural medicine services and healing centers.
May we please have the staff report?
I'm the staff report tonight. Pleased to be with you, members of the commission. I'm Jerry Dahl, I'm the city attorney. You've got a memo in your packet, and pardon me, as the commission knows, when there are amendments to Chapter 26 of the Code of Laws, those amendments have to also be reviewed by and a recommendation given by the Planning Commission, and that's why we're here tonight. I'll tell you that the City Council has adopted this on first reading already, and you well know that first readings merely for the purpose of setting a public hearing. And so they have adopted on first reading, and the public hearing is yet to occur, I think, first meeting in January, right, 13th. But they're not able to act finally on second reading unless and until they have a recommendation from you, which is why we're here tonight. Often I know you do get these ordinances before first reading, and you may be wondering, well, how come this time? Every now and again, given the schedule and given our needs to try to get second reading done at a certain time, we advance the schedule a little bit and have first reading first at council and then Planning Commission. This is one of those times. It happens once a year, maybe once every couple of years. And critically here, there's a state agency now charged with adopting regulations and issuing licenses for natural medicine businesses. And they've been working on their regulations, and they're capable of being able to begin issuing licenses the 1st of January. And so many communities across the state are getting their own regulatory programs in order so that they aren't in the position of a state-issued license for a business and no local regulation that would also overlap and support that. And actually, a number of the other clients our firm represents are in the same process. So you're not alone in having this being addressed at this schedule. So with that, let me make a few points about what the legislation has made available in the state and what local governments, including the city, can and cannot do. And then I want to address the elements of the ordinance, which is pretty simple, straightforward, and it shouldn't be too hard for me to go through. This whole regulatory scheme, or the allowance of natural medicine as a regulated industry and a regulated business, came about as a result of a citizen initiative bill and which passed, and the legislature then codified that, as they must when the citizens vote to initiate legislation. And the legislature also then in 2023 adopted a second statute which creates this state regulatory body that I described, which is going to be staffed up and is not unlike the state's marijuana enforcement division. I don't think quite as robust, and probably with fewer staffers, but nevertheless, it will need to actually take applications from people that want to open a healing center and provide natural medicine, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. And so they have to have a regulatory structure. They've, as I said, been promulgating regulations, and I assume they'll start holding hearings to grant or deny licenses to practice natural medicine. Critically, the state statute is clear in saying that no license issued by the state is effective or good unless until a local license, if required, has also been issued. And so that's why we're here. That gives the city the opportunity to have a role in these businesses. I'll tell you that across the state, local governments have taken couple different approaches here. There are a number of cities that have said, looks to us like the state regulatory program is pretty robust. We're not going to do anything. You're not required to have a local ordinance. That does mean, however, that from a locational standpoint, if I've got a business, you know, in a zone district where you'd normally not want to see a medical office, and the state issues a license for that, for a natural medicine at that location, then it can be there. So that's why many other jurisdictions have at least gotten into saying where, and that's the heart of this ordinance. It really is a where regulatory scheme. Some municipalities have gone further. Boulder, for example, has not only said where, but they've created their own licensing authority locally to review licenses, and they can do that. But that requires a fair amount of staff effort. And I'll say that the judgment of many municipalities has been, from a licensing standpoint and insurance, et cetera, we think we can rely on the state. Our main interest is where can these businesses be? And that is the focus of this ordinance. So the city, I think, has taken probably the middle ground, all the way from no regulation, say where they can be, and get into the licensing business yourself. So the ordinance in front of you is that middle ground. Importantly, the state legislation says that while you cannot prohibit these businesses in the community. That's different than marijuana and other kinds of activities where you can prohibit. And of course, here in Wheat Ridge, marijuana sales are permitted in the various restrictions. But the city could have said no. Many cities have said no. That's not true here. You may not prohibit or have regulations that effectively prohibit natural medicine businesses in the city, but you can regulate the time, place, and manner of those locations. Critically, the place, and that's where we're going to get into the zoning districts where it's recommended that they be allowed. While I'm at the time, place, and manner subject, I should say that the state legislation specifically says no matter what the locals say, not within 1,000 feet of schools and daycares. And in your packet, there should be a little exhibit. It shows you the 1,000-foot radii from schools and daycares. It shows you the blue, which are the commercial, industrial, and mixed-use zoning where we as staff are recommending these facilities be allowed. In many cases, the circles don't overlap any of the blue. And fair enough, it's where they overlap the blue that would otherwise be allowed, but because it's within 1,000 feet of the school or daycare, not allowed. And so when operators come to the city and ask the front desk planning department, hi, I have my state license, where can I be? Or where can I be before I go get my state license would be the smart thing to do. This map will be what we use. And we often use these kinds of maps to show where various uses are permitted and not. I'm almost done with this little lecture here or statement, and then you can ask me any questions you like. So I've said that time, place, and manner is all right. We're mostly in the place arena here. You might want to know about natural medicine itself, and the state statute defines what natural medicine is, and it's largely the administration of certain psychedelic substances. For those of us that are maybe old enough to remember mushrooms and shrooms back in the day, that's one of the substances. It's psilocybin mushrooms are one of those substances, including a number of other derivatives and, interestingly, mescaline, but not peyote. These are all substances that can be administered at a healing center. And I'll say that I'll share with you the discussion that was had at the council at study session when I brought this to them before they then said, okay, write up an ordinance that is just place rather than licensing. And their dialogue around, okay, where, was largely where medical facilities are, medical offices. And I will say that the council felt pretty strongly that, this is therapy. And in the old days, it was recreation. But a large part of the impetus for the enactment of the legislation, and as I've been able to learn about its use, has been, that has been very effective for the treatment of various conditions, PTSD chief among them. And the veterans community has really embraced this and found that it has actually been very, very helpful in a way that so many other therapies and drugs have not been for that particular class of disability. And I wanted to share that with you. I think that we all have kind of a memory, perhaps, of, mushrooms, but it's a serious matter, and the state's taking it seriously, and I believe the city should as well. So let's see what else I missed. That brings me to the ordinance itself, and you have it in the packet. So I've already mentioned the 1,000-foot separation, but the heart of the ordinance then is defining healing centers, and I've just invented a definition right out of the statute, centers that provide natural medicine under these two statutes. That way it saves me having to rattle on forever about what natural medicine is. I can rely on the statute. And here's where they're permitted as a permitted use. And it's in the commercial and industrial zone districts, you'll notice, NCRC, C1, C2, and IE as a permitted use, and then in the mixed use zone districts as a permitted use. And I've invented or added healing centers in both places. And even though it's clear from the statute, I felt it was important to embed in both of these charts the 1,000-foot separation. That way, if a year from now, 2 years from now, someone wants to locate, they'll see that separation language, and people won't have to go somewhere else to find it. That's a thumbnail sketch of natural medicine, what other cities are doing, and what has been recommended for you to consider. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
I will now open the hearing for public comment. Those who wish to comment in Zoom, raise your hand, use the raise your hand button, and if you're dialing in, press *9. And then is anybody signed up to speak as easily?
No, Madam Chair.
Is anybody on Zoom?
Nobody on Zoom.
All right. I will now close the citizens forum, and I'll entertain questions from the commissioners, starting with Commissioner Shelkey.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. One, the regulating the hours, does that come later on?
Thank you for that question. That's very, very, very good. And we discussed this at the council level because the concern is, probably why you're asking the question, the concern is if I go to my doctor and I need a COVID shot, I go to the office at 4:30, half an hour before they close, and I get my shot, I go home. Everything's fine. If I'm going to have an administration session with mushrooms at 4:30, I'm really not going to be in a position to care for myself until I'm done with that. And it is a form of trip, and we all know that. And it may be a number of hours. This ordinance doesn't do that. I raised that with the council and basically said what I just did, and said that there are some jurisdictions, Boulder's a very good example, where they have embedded hour restrictions to say, okay, no administration session may begin any sooner than X hours before the closing time of that office, and staff has to be on site, which makes complete sense. I expect that the state will have similar regulations, and the council, when asked that question, and because I gave them the choice, I said you can also engage in hours restrictions without having to engage in licensing per se, because that's another time, place, and manner restriction. And they felt that they could rely on two things: the medical provider itself, when you go in for other procedures that are such that you've got to take a cab home, and they won't let you, we've all had these procedures where they will not let you out of that office until you've shown that you've got a person who's taking you home. Same kind of thing. The council, I think, felt we can rely on that, and we can rely on the state licensing regime. I'll say this, that other than establishing where the locations are and needing to get that kind of in place before licenses start getting issued, there is the ability, in my opinion, to add hour restrictions and other kinds of restrictions after the fact. And you might have an existing operation and you're beginning to realize that maybe they're not taking good care of the patients and there's an issue. The city here would have the ability to layer those requirements on with no problem. Like we layer new business restrictions on existing businesses today. You know, we're careful about it. We do try not to unwind someone's business plan, but at the same time, we have the right, the city has the right to do that.
Thank you.
You bet.
On the attachment to the map, so there's not any street names on it, so it's a little confusing. So the blue, I know. So right here, this part.
Yep. All right.
Is that
Looks like
Wadsworth or?
that's probably Wadsworth. Is that Wadsworth? Wadsworth.
Okay, all right, that helps. Thank you.
Yep. You bet.
Commissioner Quinn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jerry, for your detailed report. The only thing I can think of for question is, will we have the ability to say how many licenses will be provided?
Yes. This ordinance doesn't do that. So wherever there's a medical office, if the state issues one and it's in a location that's permitted here, it can be there. My read of the statute is that the city could do that if it wished, just like the city did that for, among other things, billboards, as you well know, and has done that for marijuana as well. And the city could. I'm trying to think of what cities have. Our office represents a small community that hasn't limited the number of licenses, but it has severely constrained the location to a location that's still a legitimate location. You know, you can't say, okay, the only location is the parking lot for the police department, where, yes, that's property, but it's never going to be available for a commercial medical office, and that trick doesn't work. But this particular city I'm thinking of has constrained it down to a development that has live-work facilities, which actually is not a bad fit, but it's just that one, half a block square area, which is really going to constrain the number of licenses. But in my opinion, when the state statute says you can regulate the time, place, and manner, you're regulating the place in a way that really restricts the number. And I think that you could similarly say that we're going to allow 10. That is a regulation of the manner, in my opinion. At least the council did not feel that was necessary. In fact, they're rather supportive, I think, in viewing this as a medical and therapy procedure that and I don't mean to tell you how you should vote on it, but I'll report that they felt, one council member said, we shouldn't be standing in the way of therapy. So that's what I can tell you about that.
Commissioner Moore?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only question I had was in regards to the map. I noticed, schools and daycares with 1,000-foot. Are we considering anybody or any daycares that have already applied or have plans? I guess specifically in District 4, we just heard plans for a daycare coming in, and the map's a little small, so I'm not sure if that one is accounted for in this map.
I can say as soon as the daycare would be licensed, that would be accounted for.
Okay.
It may be a matter of first come, first priority.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gravy?
Thank you. Thank you for the report. A couple of quick questions. I'm guessing, or my assumption would be that if there was a healing center in an otherwise approved area, it wouldn't prevent someone from choosing to have a daycare business that would, I mean, can someone still open a new daycare business if they happen to be within that 1,000-foot?
That's correct. And we see that relationship, it's a good example. We see that relationship in other configurations, but there's certainly no restriction on the daycare being there. And the fact that there's a healing center with 1,000-foot, the fact there's a healing center there does not then prevent the daycare center. If the daycare were to locate after the healing center would be a legal nonconforming use in that location, just like other legal nonconforming uses that we have. And if it ceased operation, burned down, whatever, it could not be reestablished because of the 1,000-foot limit, just like we do for other nonconforming uses. That's how it would play out.
Great. Thank you. And then my second question is simply, you in your report, you stated that it's in many ways similar to the Marijuana Enforcement Division, which is I think there's some distinction in terms of the state agency that I think is fundamentally regulating these. Marijuana Enforcement Division is in the Department of Revenue, and I think that this is primarily in the Department of Regulatory Agencies that regulates licenses and professions and this sort of thing.
Yep.
I think that, just out of curiosity, it seems to me that it's unlike marijuana in the sense that, as you indicated, it's not, the healing centers are not for recreational use. But if we all recall that marijuana started with medical use as well, but I think this is even a distinction, and as far as my understanding, and I'm just curious if you agree with this assessment, is that it's for a therapeutic session that makes use of these medicines, but it's not a situation where someone's going to an office, purchasing the medicines, going home, kind of like what was the case even with medical marijuana. Is that a fair understanding?
I think that is fair, and I really appreciate you making that distinction. It's so easy for all of us, and I'm guilty of it too, and have been tonight, in saying, well, it's like it's too easy to use that parallel for more than just. And you're right, the Marijuana Enforcement Division is a regulatory scheme that does issue licenses, but I think the similarity ends there, really, because you're absolutely right. For marijuana, for liquor, which is a licensing regime at the state and local level, when you think about it, you're buying something for recreational purposes that you're going to go take home and recreate with. And this is very different. And I think council even pointed that out to me, that what we're regulating here or allowing is therapy. And the therapy is assisted by and is energized by these substances. But we're really allowing for therapy and saying where this kind of therapy can take place. And that's very different, as you point out, than buying a recreational substance. And perhaps we're all a little bit trapped by history, remembering what psilocybin mushrooms meant to people, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. But the distinction you make is correct, and I appreciate you making it.
Yeah, sure. And I could be mistaken about which state agency, and there might be the case that I think both of them have some type of programming or involvement, and I don't know those details. But I think it's also fair to say that my memory of the initiative and the reporting I've seen since is that there's one component of this, which is what we're dealing with. But then when the initiative passed, it also did allow possession and cultivation
Yes,
of
it does.
these individually. So
Yeah.
there is that component too. But yeah, just wanted to make that clear. But thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Commissioner Quinones?
I would like clarification, just one little piece of the clarification on the therapy, because there's a difference between administering on-site at that time for the use of on-site, as opposed to therapy that can go home with the individuals. Are we talking about it being administered on-site?
the regulatory scheme or here's where you can do it in this ordinance is on-site healing centers. I take the other commissioner's point that there's an element of the bill or one of the statutes that allows for home cultivation and use. And sort of similar, I don't want to overuse the marijuana example, but sort of similar to that, that's not something that is contemplated for municipal regulation. So this is restricted to commercial activity or a commercial office like a medical office on site.
Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any additional questions from the commissioners? All right, I will now close the public hearing. Excuse me. I will now entertain a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to recommend approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 26 of Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning the regulation of natural medicine services and healing centers.
May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing there's no discussion, commissioners, please vote.
Motion carries 6-0.
I will now open the public hearing for case number WZ 23-12. Commissioner Moore, will you please introduce the item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Case number WZ-23-12, an application filed by Hammers Construction for the approval of a specific development plan, SDP, for a Bonfire Burritos drive-through restaurant on a property zone planned mixed-use development, PMUD, and located at 4001 Clear Creek Drive, which is CC District 4.
May I please have the staff report?
Yes, give me 1 second. All right, thanks for your patience. Good evening. My name is Elena Olivas Loera, and I'm a planner with the City of Wheat Ridge Community Development Department. I'm presenting case number WZ 2312, which is a request for approval of a specific development plan for construction of a drive-through restaurant at 4001 Clear Creek Drive in the Clear Creek Crossing mixed-use development. I would like to enter into the public record the contents of the case file, the zoning ordinance, the comprehensive plan, and this digital presentation. The property is within the City of Wheat Ridge. All appropriate notification and posting requirements have been met, and therefore Planning Commission has jurisdiction to hear this case. There we go. The subject site is located on the west side of Clear Creek Drive, north of the Clear Creek Drive and 40th Avenue intersection, within Planning Area 6 of Clear Creek Crossing. The subject site is currently vacant. The Hampton Inn site is just to the northwest and is currently under construction, with the recently completed Outlook 2 Table Mesa apartments further northwest. The hospital campus is across Clear Creek Drive and 40th Avenue to the north, and Lifetime Fitness is to the south. The internal roadway system and utility infrastructure connecting Hampton and Lifetime on the west side of Clear Creek Drive were completed in late 2022. The subject site is located within the Clear Creek Crossing planned mixed-use development, shown in green, and is located within Planning Area 6, which is also called the Harvest District, denoting this area as a commercial subdistrict in the development. The site is surrounded by the Clear Creek Crossing development on all sides. This request for SDUHE approval is the second step in a two-part approval process pertaining to plan developments. The first step occurred in 2018 when Planning Commission and City Council approved the Clear Creek Crossing Plan Mixed-Use Outline Development Plan, which established the zoning. The zone change also included approval of a vision book that establishes the intended design and architectural themes and materials, as well as a design pattern book that includes the more substantive development regulations. An architectural control committee was established specifically for the Clear Creek Crossing development to ensure compliance with the design pattern book, third-party review, consistency across the project, and to conduct schematic design review prior to the city's planning review. It's comprised of members representing both the developer and the city, and the ACC has provided their recommendation of approval for this project. The applicant is requesting to build a one-story drive-through restaurant approximately 1,900 square feet in size. Drive-through restaurants are permitted in Planning Area 6 of the Clear Creek Crossing development, which includes the subject site. I will show more of this in detail on the next few slides, but the site also does take into consideration adequate vehicular access, planning area connectivity, and pedestrian connections. The vacant 0.64 acre site is proposed to be developed with a Bonfire Burritos restaurant, shown with the star on the map. One vehicular access point is proposed into the site from the private drive to the south. The private drive provides access to two signalized intersections to the northeast and southeast, as well as provides connectivity to other sites nearby, including the future Lookout, Primrose School, and Hampton Inn. The building is located on the southwestern portion of the site and is wrapped by a drive-through lane and parking. The building location is shown in blue. One access point is proposed on the south side, which connects to the private drive and provides connections to other surrounding sites, as well as the two signalized intersections. The SDP reflects 14 proposed parking spaces, which are placed diagonally from the building to the southeast. The amount of parking provided complies with the code for restaurant uses. The parking area also includes sidewalks, allowing pedestrian access from the site to the private streets and signalized intersections. Landscaped areas are shown in green. The project exceeds the minimum requirements for 20% of the lot to be landscaped. It includes perimeter landscaping, as well as landscaped areas around the proposed outdoor patio, which is shown in orange. The site is also surrounded by landscaped areas, including some areas along Clear Creek Drive that will continue to be maintained by the Longs Peak Metro District. This is personally my favorite part because I think they did a really good job on this. They should be proud. The architectural style is driven by the Clear Creek Crossing Design Pattern Book and Vision Book, which call for a modern agrarian aesthetic that blends traditional agrarian forms and materials with a modern feel. It also requires strong attention to be paid to the pedestrian realm. The building will be single-story, and the materials are comprised of horizontal and vertical architectural metal and wood elements with a rustic color palette. The materials carry over to all sides of the building, resulting in four-sided architecture. The building features material variation to enhance the pedestrian realm and a pitched roof with overhangs to reflect the agrarian theme. Since Wheat Ridge is not a full-service city, we sent the application on referral to outside agencies, including fire, water, and sanitation, and did an internal review as well. We did not receive objections from outside agencies, and coordination with these districts is ongoing, including Denver Water. Civil construction documents are nearing approval, and a plat is under review for the entire Block 4 area to create lots for each user, including Bonfire. A recommended condition of approval has been added to denote that minor changes may be required to the site plan to coordinate this development, with surrounding infrastructure improvements being constructed by the master developer. Before the hearing, the property was posted for 15 days and letters were sent to property owners and residents within a 1,000-foot radius, and the project was posted to Wheat Ridge Speaks. Staff received no comments from members of the public on Wheat Ridge Speaks prior to this hearing. Staff finds that the SDP is consistent with the ODP and is in compliance with all standards set forth in the ODP, the design pattern book, city code, and is consistent with the purpose of a planned development. Additionally, all agencies can serve the property. Ultimately, staff is recommending approval with the condition as listed in the staff report. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Does, excuse me. Does the applicant have a presentation?
They do not, but they are available for questions.
Great. I will now open the hearing for public comment. Has anyone signed up to speak?
No, they have not.
Is there anyone on Zoom?
Nobody on Zoom.
All right, I will close the citizens forum. I'll now entertain questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Quinones, you may go first.
I have no questions.
Commissioner Grady,
No questions.
Commissioner Moore,
No questions at the time.
Commissioner Quinn,
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Shelkey.
Is the Harvest Commercial District, is that the only area that drive-through restaurants are permitted?
Currently, but with the ODP amendment, drive-throughs will also be allowed. What is that planning area, Scott? Is it planning area full?
I think so across the street.
Stephanie is the expert on
We're
this,
not
but-
the experts on the other side of Clear Creek Drive, so not sure.
I believe it's planning area 4. And that was that ODP amendment that you heard recently.
So the other area it's permitted is where again?
If the ODP amendment is approved, then it would be permitted on the other side of Clear Creek Drive.
Okay. Oh, I see it. All right.
So here, if you can, I don't know if you can see the screen on here,
It's a little tough.
across the way. So like where Bird
Yeah.
Call and Bank of America are, those, that's where drive-throughs would also be permitted.
So like at the bank site and things like that.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners? All right, I will now close the public hearing, and I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve case number WZ 23-12, a request for approval of a specific development plan for a Bonfire Burritos drive-through restaurant on property located within Planning Area 6 of the Clear Creek Crossing Planned Mixed-Use Development at 4001 Clear Creek Drive for the following reasons. The specific development plan is consistent with the purpose of a planning development as stated in section 26-301 of the Code of Laws. The specific development plan is consistent with the intent and purpose of the outline development plan. The proposed uses are consistent with those approved by the outline development plan. All responding agencies have indicated that they can serve the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense. The specific development plan is in substantial compliance with the applicable standards set forth in the outline development plan and with the city's adopted design manuals. With the following conditions: minor site adjustments may be required to the civil construction plans to coordinate this development with surrounding infrastructure improvements and the replat. The associated subdivision plat, case number MS-24-01, shall be recorded prior to the recording of the subject SDP. Building permit submittals shall be consistent with the SDP.
May I have a second?
Second, Madam Chair.
Any discussion on the motion? I would just like to say that I second the loveliness of your drawing and your building. It has a little bit of personality. That's great. So thank you. All right, commissioners, please vote.
Motion approved, 6-0.
Thank you. All right, now I will open the public hearing for case number ZOA-2407. Commissioner Quinones, would you please read?
Case number ZOA 2407, an ordinance amending Chapter 26 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws, creating a new Article 14 entitled Mixed Use Lutheran Legacy Campus Zone District and making conforming amendments therewith.
May we please have the staff report?
Good evening, Commission. Scott Cutler, Senior Planner, and Jana is joining me as well to talk about the Mixed Use Lutheran Legacy Campus. We finally have some regulations for you to review. I think this is the third time you've seen some iteration of these regulations at 2 study sessions over the summer and fall. And now with these almost final draft ordinances, we're going to City Council for first reading in January 13th, and then City Council will review the final format of these regulations January 26th, I believe, Monday, January 26th. So this ordinance, as you know, will create a new Article 14 in the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws that will establish a new zone district called the Mixed Use Lutheran Legacy Campus for the hospital campus that is now mostly vacant. These regulations will establish development standards for the future redevelopment of the Lutheran Legacy Campus. And they're all based on the adopted Lutheran Legacy Campus Master Plan and prior City Council and Planning Commission consensus. An approval of this ordinance will then allow for the Lutheran Legacy Campus to be rezoned to this zone district in the future, and that those hearings would take place in March and April of next year if approved. So just wanted to give a quick update. Obviously, there's a lot to go through. It's 32 pages. The final ordinance with all of the fancy ordinance text is about 50 pages. So it's only going to get longer from here. But the copy that you have is almost identical to what City Council will be reviewing in January. There were a couple of notes where some graphics were missing that we're still working on refining, but all the content is there. And so we felt it was appropriate to go ahead and go to Planning Commission for a recommendation hearing. Couple of changes that have happened since last time, and then happy to answer any questions. I know it's a lot to get through. I don't want to repeat the same presentation I've given twice. Couple of things, though, that we have added since our last Planning Commission meeting. One is related to tree replacement. So we consulted with our landscape planner, Janet Gassman, and wrote these ordinances. Wrote those regulations really to focus on preservation or replacement of existing trees on the campus. There's actually a really major point in the master plan that we had not included in any of the drafts you had seen, but really it's meant to focus on the replacement, not replacement, what is the word I'm looking for? Preservation of existing trees on the campus, existing healthy, non-invasive trees on the campus. And the table in the ordinance provides some information about how those larger trees could be preserved, or if they needed to be replaced, at what quantities they need to be replaced. It's essentially a like for like. So if a tree was 4 inches wide, you would have to replace it with trees that add up to 4 inches. So it could be one large tree, or it could be replaced maybe 2 2-inch trees, something like that. The goal is to have these larger trees incentivized to be preserved as much as possible. The other change that we've made since we last talked was related to the requirement for mixed-use development. And I believe when we last were at Planning Commission, we talked about, it's really difficult to assign a minimum square footage of commercial for a development. We've really struggled with that in other parts of the city. And originally, we were proposing that they just have to provide a use that's not residential on the property. And after further review and some more economic analysis, we felt that that actually wasn't going far enough in order to ensure that there would be some sort of tax generating uses, retail, restaurant actually built. Just saying, oh, you have to build a little bit, that might not have been enough. So we're now proposing more of a minimum square footage on the campus that has to be some sort of retail or restaurant use. We're still refining that exact language, but I did provide the draft in the code for you. And tonight, we're really looking for Planning Commission's recommendation. Ultimately, this will go to City Council for final approval. And then if that happens, we'd be back in front of Planning Commission to actually rezone the property sometime in the late winter, early spring. Thank you.
All right, let's try that again. I will now open the hearing for public comment. Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
No, Madam Chair.
Do we have anyone on Zoom?
Nobody on Zoom.
All right, I will close the citizens forum. I will now entertain questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Moore.
No questions at this time.
Commissioner Quinn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thanks, Scott, for clarifying a few things. We're looking at a square footage over the entire campus that needs to be commercial, or just, can you kind of explain that a little bit? I'm sorry.
Yes, no worries. Yes, so it would be a minimum square footage, and it would be specifically in those sub-districts 2 and 4, which are the ones closer to 38th Avenue. The heat maps that showed the viability of retail and restaurant from the master plan, once you get more than a block or so away from 38th Avenue, they're not as viable. We would still allow it, but from a market standpoint, we wanted to make sure that this requirement really spoke to where something could actually get built and actually become occupied. So it's really that kind of northern corner where the master plan initially pointed out as being probably the most likely to have some sort of retail. And yeah, it's a minimum square footage. It can be in, one or both. It doesn't really matter the configuration as long as that square footage is there.
And I'll just add to that in keeping with the attempted preservation, anticipated preservation of the chapel and the Blue House, among other things, the Blue House, for example, would be one spot where some of that commercial could live. And we know from the past, it has actually lived there. And so that's something that could definitely be explored. And so there could be an adaptive reuse on the site that would accommodate some of that commercial, whether it be retail, restaurant, something like that.
Perfect. Thanks, Janet. That was the next question, was how are we going to incorporate that? So appreciate it. Thank you all for your hard work on this. I know it's a lot.
Commissioner Shelkey.
No questions.
Commissioner Gravy.
Can you remind me whether I was looking through this and noticed that there is a distinction of the minimum parking for deed restricted affordable housing, which I think is not unique to this zoning. It's more of a citywide element, I think. But do we have, is there any affordable housing component in any of the work being done for the campus at this stage in terms of requiring it or paving the way for deed restricted affordable housing here?
I can answer the required part, which is we can't currently require it. But yeah, that our code does distinguish between deed restricted units and non-deed restricted and parking and some other requirements as well. I'm not sure how to really answer the other part, whether it's being considered. That's kind of the developer's decision, partially for sure.
I think Scott answered that as thoroughly as we can at this point. We cannot require affordable housing. We can encourage it. And it really is, whether or not the market will bear it and also what types of funding are available. So we're hoping that there is some affordable housing. I know that having a mix of housing on the site and elsewhere in the city is desirable. So we'll see what types of, it wouldn't probably be the master developer anyway, developing the affordable housing. They would subdivide and then sell off parcels. So you never know. There could be, there's some advantages as far as fees and that sort of thing that may help to incentivize having some deed restricted or affordable rental units.
So if that is a discussion that will be had, it's likely to be had further on in the process in terms of specific development plans.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Quinones.
I have no questions.
Any additional questions from the commissioners? I will now close the public hearing, and I will entertain a motion.
I move to recommend approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 26 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws, creating a new Article 14 entitled Mixed Use Lutheran Legacy Campus Zone District, and making conforming amendments therewith.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
I have one comment, Madam Chair, if I could. I would just like to, again, just take the opportunity to thank staff for making this happen, and everybody else in the city who's been so thoughtful, forward-thinking. It's an extremely exciting, part of Wheat Ridge's future, and I think it's being executed really well so far, and it's exciting to watch continue to unfold. So thank you so much for your work.
Anyone else? All right, commissioners, please vote.
Motion carried 6-0.
All right, thank you, staff, for all of those presentations. Do we have any old business?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I don't have any development updates, but on the dates schedule, we will not have a meeting on January 2nd. And it appears right as of right now, because the publication date is coming up soon, we will not have a meeting on January 16th. So, but we will likely have a meeting on February 6th. So you may have a light month in January where you can further read this large packet.
I thought you were saying we could frolic or something like that.
I don't use that word, but
Do we have any commissioner updates? Anything exciting in our world? All right. May I please have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Madam Chair, just want to say Merry Christmas to everyone in Wheat Ridge. Appreciate the festive decorations. Whoever did that, awesome. And with that being said, Madam, I move to adjourn.
We have a second.
Second.
Commissioners, please vote.
Motion approved 6-0.
Thank you, everybody.
thank you and happy holidays.